Welcome to this beginner web development course. I am Augustine and I'll be your host all through this course. In this course, we will be learning how to build web applications using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So these are what we're going to be using to build web application during this course, and we are going to be learning what HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, what they really are. But for now, I will just need to give you a brief intro of what they are. So I'll be giving you a very lay definition of what these things are so you have a proper understanding. So HTML is actually a structured language that is used for building the architecture of our website. So this website is looking this way because of HTML has actually specified that it should look this way. In a way, so HTML are like the building block, while CSS is actually a cascading style sheet that is used for styling our HTML code. And JavaScript, you could just say it's actually a scripting language for adding more functionality. And I would like to understand this very well by giving you this example. So let's take a look at a building, for instance. In a building, when we just have a new building, that's actually like the HTML code. But when we start painting the building and adding decorations to the building, adding a garden in the building, those things that actually makes the garden to look beautiful could be referred to as the CSS code. And for JavaScript, JavaScript is like making some kind of home automation, making your home a smart home, those additional functionality that enhance the comfort of your home is actually could be referred to as JavaScript in this case. So we have HTML like the normal building, the CSS is like the decoration of the building, while the JavaScripts are like the extra effect that has been added to the building or to our homes as well. So that's just actually what HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are. We're going to be taking a look at this in detail later on. So you might be wondering if this course is for you. Well, if you're interested in learning web development and you don't have any prior knowledge on programming or on coding, this course is for you because we're going to be starting from the very basic to teach you HTML, CSS, and JavaScript down to an advanced stage. The only thing that is required for you to take this course is for you to be able to access the internet, which I am assuming that you already know how to access the internet because you're watching this video right now. And aside from the internet connection, what you would need is also a computer. So those are the two major tools you need, an internet connection and a computer. So aside from those two, there are other tools you need, which I'm going to be telling you how to get them in this course. One of it is actually a web browser and the other one is actually an IDE. And for starters, an IDE simply means an integrated development environment, and I'll be explaining more on that later on. So having said this, there is also one more tool we'll be using. The tool is actually called a developer tool, and we can access that by clicking over here if you are using a Chrome browser. And just so you know, we're going to be using a Chrome browser or a Firefox browser all through this course, actually. So if you're using any other browser, you have to find a way to access the developer tool. In most cases, there is a shortcut to it. When you just press Ctrl-Shift-I, it actually opens the developer tool. And when you press Ctrl-Shift-I again, it closes the developer tool. So, but the other way for you to open the developer tool is to click on this icon. You click on More Tool and you click on Developer Tool, and here you can see the keyboard shortcut over here. So clicking on this is going to open the developer tool, and the developer tool is a kind of a playground for development. So whatsoever is being displayed here is actually as a result of code that is being shown on the developer tool. For instance, I'll give an example of what we can do with the developer tool. I can click on this select arrow over here, move my mouse over any part of the page, and the code responsible for displaying any one of these things would be displayed on the developer tool. So for example, I'm going to click on this particular part of this web page, and I'm going to edit this particular code. So I'm going to double click on this. I'm going to erase HTML, actually backspace, so this HTML and column. Okay, sorry, I erased that and I press enter. So when I press enter, you could see that the HTML is no longer there. anymore. And if I want to add the HTML back, I can just come here, I write HTML column, and I press enter again, or I could just choose to change this to something else. So let's say this is cool. So I could just change this to this is cool, and I could see the change being made immediately. So that is why I call the developer tool a developer's playground. So we can use this to edit our code on the fly. So this being said, remember I said that the CSS is actually used for adding styling to our HTML code. Now, and we could say we made the analogy of a building, that the painting of a building is just like the CSS in programming. So for instance, let's say I want to paint this part of this web page, all the text of this web page, I want to paint it to be red. To do that now, I actually means I want to change the color. I'm sure you get that. So to change the color of this text now, I could just come over here, click on the body, and we could see where over here is being written styles. I could come to the styles, and I'll come here, I'll write color, and I will say this is red. Now you could say that our text here they've all changed to red color, but we have some of them that are actually still black. So while we go further in this training, you'll get to understand why some of them are red and why the others are black. So we'll talk about that later on during this training. So one other thing I wanted to know is I'm going to close this developer tool by clicking on the cancel here. That's another way to close it. So one other thing I wanted to note is that this website currently is a documentation website for HTML, and there's a documentation for CSS, there's a documentation for JavaScript. So these documentations are just like user manual. Just like when you get a TV set, you have a user manual that actually teaches you how to use your TV set. So that's how we have this documentation. They actually teach us how to use HTML. So we're going to be using this documentation a whole lot during the course of this training. And of course, you could get this documentation by going to this particular web address over here, and I'm going to place all the links to the description of this video. You can click on it and go to this documentation for HTML, and this is for CSS, and this is for JavaScript. But this website, which is called developer.mozilla.org, is not the only documentation we have for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We also have more. And another good documentation for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is actually this website called the W3 School. So W3 School has the documentation for HTML, another for CSS, and this is for JavaScript. So aside from the Mozilla documentation and the W3 School documentation, we also have so many other documentation, but these are the two documentations we'll be using all through this course. So I would like to see you all on the next video. Goodbye for now.